So let's start with this. The 10-part MJ documentary is over. I loved it. It was a walk down memory lane. I can't think of anybody in sports outside of Tiger Woods I'd probably watch a 10-part documentary. He's had enough controversy and greatness, and there's a combination of stuff. What made Jordan so fascinating is there was controversy. He was fighting his GM. There was the Rodman factor. Not all great teams are fascinating. I'm not sure I could watch 30 minutes of a one-part documentary on the Tim Duncan Spurs. I'm not sure I could get through it. I don't want to watch a documentary on Alabama football. They're just great. They're not fascinating. I could watch a 5-part documentary on the Miami Hurricanes or Pete Carroll's Trojans. Not all documentaries are fascinating. Michael's was. One of the takeaways and one of the things that's frustrating for fans, and I've always had this belief, leave a party too early than late. Nothing but more cocktails and more dumb comments and trouble the later you stay at a party. Come late, leave early, make an appearance, have some fun, shake some hands, leave early. You don't want to be the last guy around the keg, okay? You don't. And to me, the Bulls left at the perfect time, 98. Now, there's a lot of people, Michael Jordan at the end, saying, I wish we could have come back for one more. No. This is perfect. It adds to the mythology. One of the cool things about Michael Jordan's legend, there's a lot of what if with it. Not with Bird, not with Magic, not with LeBron in Cleveland. It's kind of pathetic. It unravels. It is time. But there's a lot of what if with Jordan. Ooh, 6 for 6, but what if he didn't play baseball? Ooh, he could have gone 8 for 8. What if Jerry Krause didn't break him up? Ooh. Michael and the Bulls left the party just a little early, and it adds to his shoe sales and mythology. The following year, Pippen was not going to stay because Houston was offering him a contract of $80 million. He wasn't going to stay for 14 in Chicago for 1 year. Rodman was getting older and distracted and less consistent. Tony Kukoc was not the kind of player Michael was ever close to or could rely on. If you go back to it, the 98 season, never forget this. Phil Jackson figured it out, too. Phil Jackson told Jerry Krause, I'm not rebuilding, I'm out. Phil Jackson, who came off great in this documentary, is like, boom, clean, out, 6. Is that the Spurs dynasty had arrived. So in 99, the year Michael says, I want to come back for one more year, the Spurs went in the playoffs. They swept the Lakers, they swept the Blazers, and destroyed the Knicks in 5. It was Duncan and Robinson, and frankly, you think Karl Malone was a bad matchup for Chicago? How would have Duncan and Robinson been? It was over. You watch this. How many close games were there? It was over. They were old. They were the best team, but they were winning a lot of those games, let's be honest, over Utah and over Indiana. They were winning some of those games on moxie, championship medal, an individual play by Michael late. It wasn't they were steamrolling teams. In fact, against Utah, they didn't score 100 points in the finals. Why? Because they were offensively challenged. They were only 9th in the NBA in 1998. 9th in offense. That's with the greatest offensive player ever. 9th. Okay? So the idea... that it come back. No. The push-off, Michael hits it. He's holding the trophy. They're 6 for 6. Seacrest out. It's the perfect way to do it. This is why the mythology of Michael is almost as great as the reality of Michael. Like Michael had a lot of struggles. A lot. Antagonized by his own GM. Pippen could be unreliable. Rodman was flaky and increasingly distracted. Kukoc was never really like one of the guys. Steve Kerr, Paxson, their career averages are 6 points a game. It was perfect. They were old, tired, offensively challenged, and Michael and the Bulls left the party just a little early, never too late. Now let me shift to this. Scottie Pippen. I covered him in Portland. Apparently, Scottie Pippen has been wounded, is the word, by the documentary. And I've said this before. I don't think I've ever met anybody in their life that didn't deserve their reputation. I mean, we earn our reputations. Maybe not when you're 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, but by the time you're 30, 40, 50, 60, you are what you are, good or bad. I've never seen a pro athlete who was a great guy with a terrible reputation. Jay Cutler's difficult. That's his reputation. Aaron Rodgers, talented but can be difficult. That's his reputation. Dennis Rodman, talented but flaky. That's his reputation. I'd say those are spot on. Okay? So Scottie Pippen doesn't like how he's portrayed in this. But having covered him, I think it's been as accurate with Scottie as anybody. Scottie is seen as super talented, vital to Michael Jordan's success, sometimes immature, pouted. They didn't bring up the DUI in the dock or the gun charge against Scottie. They showed the pouting on the bench. They showed him when he basically decided, I'm not going to get rehab and a surgery in the summer because I want to have a fun summer to hurt the team. When I covered Scottie, I thought he was really talented. I thought he was tough as hell. I thought he was a nice guy. But I never thought he was a leader. I thought he was the classic great vice president. And it should be noted, most great athletes are not great leaders. Jeter was. A-Rod was just talented. Peyton Manning and Brady are. Russell Wilson is. But I can name lots of quarterbacks. I've said with Aaron Rodgers, he's great. I don't know if he's a great leader. He's just really talented. But to be a great leader, you generally need examples of great leadership. Look at Scottie's background and look at Michael. One of the great advantages Michael had was rock-solid parents, into Dean Smith, into David Falk, into David Stern. Michael had so many amazing examples of leadership. Michael's too smart not to have gleaned some of that off that. Scottie Pippen's background, he didn't go to a classic college basketball power with a Dean Smith. His upbringing from the documentary was tougher. His father had a stroke very early. He went to a small college. So when I look at Scottie Pippen, I think he's an amazing American story. Is that if you look at his childhood, he didn't grow up with much, and he became an unbelievable. Now he's a broadcaster. He was a great player. He's a top 30 player I've ever seen, maybe a top 20 player. I don't know. But to ask every athlete to be a great leader is like asking every human being on the planet to be a great leader. Isn't that the thing we always complain about every presidential election? These are the candidates? This is what we're left with? Those are grown-ups. He was a kid. Scottie was a great player. He's a great story, but the documentary has not been unfair. It's been reasonable that Michael was the better player and the better leader. Scottie was super talented, but sometimes you couldn't count on him in big situations. I don't think that's inappropriate, nor do I think it's unfair. I think it's what Scottie is. Super talented, like a lot of pro athletes, but not built or not comfortable. Maybe that's a better word. To take the burden of a franchise on his shoulders. That wouldn't be abnormal. That would be normal. Most 21, 24, 27, 32-year-olds are not ready to carry like Russell Wilson an NFL franchise. They're simply not. And if you look at Russell Wilson and you look at Jeter and you look at Peyton Manning, much of the credit goes to when they were kids. And the people giving them great leadership ideas and paths. And so I don't think Scottie's been inappropriately or unfairly labeled. I think it showed him as a great teammate at times, sometimes a little moody and pouty. And in crisis, sometimes he was great, sometimes he wasn't. He was not always bad in crisis. He was often great in crisis. The one thing that thing showed last night was how tough he was. And I can say this having covered him. Scottie played through a lot of injuries. He hit the deck a lot, was on the floor a lot, was never 100% healthy, took care of his body, played hurt. Said this about Cam Newton. I don't love Cam. Cam is hurt a lot and playing through pain a lot. That and Scottie, I'll always give him credit for. All right, so there's a poll out this morning. It's a little recency bias. I think it was on ESPN. 73% of people on the poll chose Michael over LeBron. But he won every category. So I got 16 of the 17 categories. One was just stupid. So here's where I agree. This is where I agree with the fans. Better sneaker for fashion. Yeah, I mean, Jordan sells a lot of shoes. Pick for a game-winning shot. I think LeBron's underrated here, but Michael's the better offensive player and the best mid-range shooter in the history of the game. Come through in the clutch. Again, LeBron's underrated here. It's closer to 60-40, but I'd take Michael. Spectacular to watch play. That ain't close. Michael Jordan's game had much more cool factor. LeBron came into the league as a freight train. In fact, I remember criticizing him first 4 or 5 years. I'm like, I know he's great, but he's boring. The first run in Cleveland was mostly boring. Better offensive player. Yeah, that's Michael. Michael is a relentless offensive player. Better look. I'm not sure what that means. Is that glamour, fashion, look, cool? Yeah, I mean, Jordan's probably the coolest player ever. Better defensive player. Again, I think LeBron in his prime was really, really good, but Michael was the best one-on-one defensive player for a long stretch in the NBA. Here's a toss-up. Better overall player. Jordan dominated this one. There's a lot. There's a lot LeBron does. LeBron's a bigger, stronger athlete. Way better passer. Better rebounder. Better overall player. Be careful about that one. NBA was better all around, people say. Well, it's more skilled now. Years ago, it was more physical. The rivalries were more bitter. There was more trash talking, and they weren't all buddies. So you could make an argument, but there's things about the old days I like, and there's things about the new game I like. Michael would win 1-on-1 to 21. LeBron's got 3.5 inches and 35 pounds of muscle. You ever played one-on-one? Guy with a big butt, 35 pounds heavier? Hard to beat. They can back in on you. I'm not so sure LeBron James wouldn't get the ball first and just back in on Michael. He's got a great left hand and a great right hand. He can use the glass. LeBron would be tough one-on-one. Top pick to start a team. Well, let's be honest about this. Michael Jordan quit twice. Hey, where'd Michael go? Baseball. Well, where'd Michael go? Wizards. I could make an argument LeBron's the better choice to start a franchise. Have a drink with. Not even sure what that means. To be honest with you, who would tell better stories? Probably Michael, but I'm not sure about that. Now, here's where I disagree with the 17 questions, all favoring Michael. Choose as and by the way, for those on radio, Michael usually won 60 to 75% on all these. So I disagree on this. Choose as a teammate. I think I'd choose LeBron as a teammate. I think he's more fun to be around. He's more inclusive. He's not on your butt all the time. And he's just kind of he's an easy hang. Michael's a difficult hang. Could be a great hang, could be overbearing. Positive impact off the court. Michael's very private. He sells shoes. LeBron's done an amazing thing. The school's just one of amazing things LeBron's done. LeBron's the better off the court. Better passer, this ain't close. LeBron is second or third best passer I've seen in my life. After Magic and Bird, I'm not even sure after. LeBron's an unbelievable passer. For a 6'9.5" guy to be able to pass 20 feet across court and literally get the ball in the perfect shooting position every time is unbelievable. That ain't close. Michael wasn't a terrible passer. He was a reluctant passer. LeBron's an unbelievable passer. Trust to pass you the ball. No, that's LeBron. In fact, LeBron got knocked his first 7-8 years in the league because he passed the ball too much. So, some of it's recency bias. I would say this. Was the league better back then? Just here's the way I would state it. Years ago, back in the MJ, the league allowed hand checks, meaning it was very physical, and guys hit the deck, and guys got pissed, and guys got in fights, and it was intense. The league was more intense than physically. It was really, you saw MJ and Bird meet last night and the words they used. It was a very alpha male man's league. In hockey, you have how in hockey you'd have a fight guy on your roster years ago? In the NBA, everybody had Dale Davis. You had to have a couple guys that were just willing to knock you on your butt. 6'9", 258, 260, tough dudes. It was a tougher league. It was a harder league. It was a combative league. And there was a lot of fights and pushing and shoving. And, people were pushing Michael. And so, everybody looks like Reggie Miller today. Everybody's long, handsome, skinny, runs around. He looked like a toothpick because it was a lift weights, bang into people, knock them over, take their head off league. And there's a part of that that's very fun. It's like SEC football. It's just more physical. It just matters more. Today's more of a cardio league, a little everybody's buddies league, and everybody's getting rich league. But the players are far more skilled now. You can't have two guys on the floor who can't shoot a three. mean, Trent Thompson years ago, Tristan Thompson, he'd been a good player in the NBA. Now it's like, oh, good. Where do we put Tristan Thompson? So I always put athletes are bigger, better, and stronger than they've ever been. But there are parts. I mean, not all sports are better now. I mean, college basketball was way better in the 80s. Because guys like Patrick Ewing would come back for his sophomore year, his junior year. Stars would come back for their senior year. So you knew them. You had an emotional connection to athletes in college basketball. Now it's a bunch of guys I've never met. They're here for an hour. If they come at all to college basketball, they're off to the NBA. I don't think the quality is very good in college basketball. I don't think my connectivity to college basketball is nearly as good. I know the coaches more than I know the players. That's generally not good for a sport.